bright. So bright I need to wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
I'm excited as ever to be here joining you today. I was recently working on a stakeholders guide for ongoing commissioning and got to the section where we needed to define what commissioning is. Something that should be easy for me. I've been working on standards and best practices for a while. I started with the standard definition of a systematic process, and I stopped there. I realized I think we've been getting it wrong. Sorry, I can't see with these sunglasses. Commissioning is not about a process. It's about people. What our job is to bring people together, whether it be owners, operators, contractors, engineers, so many other stakeholders that we work with, to make buildings work and to create great projects together. I think that's the same for this conference too. We're coming here together, making new friends, reconnecting with old friends. I'm here because of Jeff Connor. My first conference was, I think it was 2007, Jeff, that we met. And he tagged me on the shoulder, said, "Welcome to the BCA, welcome to the conference. Would you like to volunteer?" Actually, I don't think you asked, I think you told me. And I started writing checklists with the BCA, and 15 years later, it's amazing to be here. Amazing to see so many familiar faces and to meet some new ones too. So as we come here together for our conference, I'm going to ask a couple things. One is learn something new, but even more importantly, meet someone new, because commissioning is about people. It's about what we do together. Our theme this year is imagination to innovation. We have a lot of great ideas being presented here today. Shortly, we'll be hearing from our keynote, a NASA scientist, Damon. Really looking forward to that session, and we have so many other speakers that are going to be joining us talking about technology, our foundations and best practices, where we're going as an industry, and where we can go with a little bit of imagination. So with that, speaking of the conference, Lynn, I'll let you take it away with some thank yous.
Thank you. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank our opening session sponsor, Blue Rhythm. Can everybody give them a hand? And our platinum sponsors, McKinstry, Bernhardt. Our gold sponsors, AKF, CX Alloy, JBB, oh no, this is too dark, Paladin, Page, Prices. Thank you! Team effort, thank you. And, oh my God, this is awful. RMF Engineering. Our silver sponsor, Grumman Budkus. And our golf sponsors. Now, just know, we are looking for additional donations to the scholarship fund. You did not have to play golf to donate. You can get to it in your app. If you have any questions, I'm happy to show you. Ask any board member. They'll be happy to show you. Our annual dinner sponsors. Oh my gosh. We got these cool shades. We had a lot of fun. I grew a beard just for the occasion. It was hard to shave this morning. That was EEI, CX Alloy, and of course it was at the fabulous House of Blues. Our exhibitor reception sponsor, Systems Engineers West. Systems West Engineers. Gosh, I'm going to owe a lot of beers tonight. Thank you. Our conference exhibitors. Without this, conference exhibitors not only bring extra material, information, new practices to our conference, but they're also one of the driving reasons why we're able to make this possible. So thank you to all of our exhibitors. And our track sponsors. Thank you all. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you very much. You'll notice they have a, let's see, where's our blue badge? We have a few of you out here. Thank you again for making this conference what it is, the best technical commissioning conference, I think, in the world. Right?
I agree.
Good answer. Our chapters, some of which are sponsors, thank you so much for being here. You are the reason why we have local connections. I know a few chapters are having get-togethers tonight. I hope to see every one of you there. Can we have a show of hands for any chapter presidents that are here? Very good. Thank you so much for your leadership. Last but not least, thank you to our staff. We can't do this without you. You are all so wonderful. Yes, we love you. Some of you may have noticed Liz is not here. She's in the right place today. She's spending time with family.
Yeah, for 30 years of having this conference, this is the first time that Liz hasn't been able to be at the conference, which is hard to believe, hard to imagine. You know, she's been deeply involved in the preparation. She's with us in heart. She is good, doing good, and her family's doing good, but like Lynn said, she's where she needs to be. And we have a wonderful staff here. Sherry, raise your hand, wave to everyone. Amy, Maria, if you guys need anything as you're here, please see our staff up front.
Or don't, come to us. They're too busy. We love you guys. Thank you so much.
You're the top guns. All right, Nancy Benner Award. So we do this award every year. Nancy Benner is actually the larger reason most of us are here. It's definitely the reason why the BCA was founded and where it came from and the roots. You know, Nancy Benner had a passion for making commissioning business as usual. She was a market transformation leader, and rarely do I go to an event where her name isn't coming up or her memory isn't brought up, and the focus on making commissioning business as usual. So with that, I have the distinct pleasure of presenting this year's Benner Award. Lynn Gomes. Many of you know Lynn. Over the years, she's been deeply involved in the conference, but there's a lot of other things that Lynn has done to make commissioning business as usual. Hold it together. 5 more minutes. I've worked so closely with Lynn over the years. It's such a pleasure to be recognizing her today. You know, a few years ago, she was Karnak the Magnificent. I don't think Karnak could have predicted that she was going to get the Benner Award today. That's pretty honest. Over the years, not only has she been leading this conference, she's been involved in the board for the California chapter, the International Board of Directors for the BCA. The reason that this conference has been so successful is because of Lynn, her passion, her energy, her creativity. She energizes our industry. She makes it business as usual. Lynn has been honored to be included in the 2022 20 to Watch Women in HVAC. She instructed numerous venues on best practices for how to commissioning for lighting controls. She's co-chaired the IES standard for commission process applied to lighting and control systems. And she's designed, construction, managed, and commissioned millions of square feet of high-performing buildings. In every project, Lynn strives to create buildings that work, and they work because of commissioning. Today, Lynn is a senior commissioning MEP coordinator at DPR Construction. She's managing complex MEP projects for high-performance buildings across the U.S. She's pushing the boundaries of commissioning and truly making it business as usual and fun. Thank you, Lynn, and it's a pleasure to honor you today with the Benner Award. You want to say? For the record, this is the first time I've ever seen Lynn speechless.
It's a first,
It
Justin.
is a first. Thanks, Lynn. All right. Our keynote speaker today comes from NASA. I used to think that commissioning was the rock stars of our industry, and I think I've been brought down a notch as I talk to a NASA scientist and engineer. Damon is going to be joining us. He joins us from the Kennedy Space Center, where he focuses on human factors. He's an expert and a PhD in industrial engineering. So what is human factors? Human factors is NASA's version of commissioning. Damon, you don't know this, but you're a commissioning provider. You're in good company with us. Human factors looks at how astronauts and ground engineers and others operate systems, and how we design, engineer, and construct those systems to best be optimized by those users. Damon's got a long history, a lot of great information and case studies for us to learn from, and it's a pleasure to introduce Damon for today's keynote. Thank you, Damon. As we kick this off, you're going to get very familiar with this slide. So all of our sessions today are eligible for continuing education units through AIA Quality Assurance. This will be presented in every session as well as the learning objectives for the sessions. Please take note of these. If you need any help with your CEUs, you can see the staff up front, or I think we'll have information in the app as well. So with that, let me kick it off with Dan. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a video. It's kind of long. Sorry.
But it's pretty cool.
It's about Artemis. It kind of captures everything that we're doing in Artemis. So. I hope all the slides aren't going to be that small.
What's that? Is that too small?
Small? Like, they look kind of big, right?
It's big on the screen there. Yeah. Do you need this slide bigger?
It's fine. Okay. All right. Just long enough to read anything. Yeah, this is all the Artemis, all the things that we've been putting together for the last probably 12 years for that Artemis launch and beyond. So it's going to increase. And then we're going to go to Mars, and that's our technology. Okay. And I just want to thank Liz. She's the one who encouraged me to do this. I kind of wasn't sure I'd be a good fit, but she gave me encouragement to do this. And I might have to stand here because it's not easy to see the slides. And I'll try to talk to the audience, but I got to look at the slides a little bit too. So, oh, it's my turn. Okay, so this is just a slide showing that we're like in the middle of a wildlife refuge. So there's all kinds of animals out there, wild pigs, and there's alligators, a lot of alligators and turtles and bald eagles and stuff like that. So,
Move the mic over, sorry.
okay, yeah, I got like this mic too. So,
Okay. Oh.
and then this is just showing like all the different like companies we have out there doing work, and all these companies have facilities. So that's probably interesting for your group. SpaceX is doing a lot of work out there, and Boeing is starting up there, and we have all these other companies. Blue Origin has a lot of facilities. If you go out there and do a tour, you'll see big buildings out there that they have. And these are some with them. Our engineering directorate, that's where I work in. I work in one of the divisions, and with our director, we cover all of these different groups, like the commercial crew, and then the biggest one is EGS. That's the Exploration Ground System, and that's the ones that I do the human factors for the ground systems for them. And this is just showing that the first launch of the manned launch or crewed launch for SpaceX was in 2020, and then since then there's been 11 more, or 11 total. And we'll get into the human factors in a little bit, but I just wanted to give you an introduction to what we do out there. And then we had the Boeing launch. They're kind of, they're gonna have another launch. They had 2 launches already. And we also launched like different kinds of things out to deep space with the launch service program. And these are some of the missions, and we have a lot more missions, but these are some of the missions within the last couple of years. This is an outdated slide, so. And we do other things like exploration research. So what we'll do is like for different programs and different projects, there'll be research that's being done for that. And lately, the next thing is the Gateway Deep Space. It's a kind of like a space station that goes around the moon, and then what will happen is our capsule will go up to that space station, and then we'll have a lander that goes down to the moon and comes back to that space station that goes around the moon. And this is the view from my window where I sit, and that is the shape of the orbiter of the space shuttle. It's a walk path, and it's kind of a memory of the shuttle. But out there in the far distance is a Starship Tower. And this is a little closer, and this is only about half the size of it right now. It's twice as high. And you've heard about the Starship, I'm sure. They launched it in Boca Chica. It's the biggest rocket, actually, next to ours. And within our engineering group, this is our roadmap, and these are all the different, like I showed before, like commercial crew and the EGS exploration ground systems that we support. So I think we're getting into the Artemis phase 1, and this is we're gonna land the first woman on the moon, and we're gonna be having sustaining there, so it'll be a permanent presence on the moon. Once we get started there, and after that, then we'll go on to Mars and to the solar system. And this is just showing the elements, the flight elements. You have the Orion capsule to the left, and then to the right is the launch vehicle that's called SLS, Space Launch System. And that shows the booster. It comes off of a barge that comes in there, in that area, and then it goes over to the VAB, and then everything is stacked on vertically in the VAB, Vehicle Assembly Building. So sorry, the last time I talked, they said I need to explain better. I was saying VAB, and what's VAB? So, and then to the right, that's the mobile launcher tower, and that's where it rolls out to the pad on that tower. So it's a big crawler that picks it up and takes it out there. This is the launch control system. So this is where they do all the launch countdown. And let's see. This is part of human factors too. I don't have any slides about the screens, but the controls and displays, we keep them consistent coloring. Like red is emergency, or it's something you have to address right away, and green means everything's working good. So those kind of things and more. We look at the human error and usability. And these are, I kind of call them hidden figures, because we've been working on human factors since probably for the last 15, 20 years, and it's kind of like people have come along the way and they took the torch, but there's no, flags or any, there's no kind of thing, recognition really, that we've done all this for human factors. So the one on the top, she was my supervisor. And Tim Barthy gave me this chart for early on in my career, basically saying out of about, I can't read it here, 335 mishaps during that time frame, was it 96 to 2007. They looked at all these mishaps and said, well, what was causing the mishaps? And a lot of it was through the design. So like it says there, is that 23%? Okay, something like that. So when you want to get ahead of this in the design, you want to try to prevent those mishaps, and human factors is a way to look at the human, how they do things, and what could go wrong, and try to redesign it, or come up with a workaround, or come up with some kind of safety features that you can prevent something from going wrong or recover from it. So this is kind of like standards, and basically we go by the FAA Human Factors Design Standard, and there's like over 1,000 requirements in there. And early on what we did is we grouped all of those into 14 different areas, and that's what we call the human factors checklist. So we have these different areas like access to be able to get into something with a tool, or be able to reach things, or be able to see what you need to see, or lifting something, is it too heavy, or pushing a cart to where you need to go, or some kind of equipment. So those are the kind of things in the checklist. And I wanted to show this example, this mobile launcher tower, because a lot of our work for human factors was done in this tower. This is mobile launcher 1. We also have a mobile launcher 2 we just got finished through the design phase, but Bechtel company is the one that did the designing, and basically for human factors, they did all the human factors assessments. We just showed them what we did in the past, and they took those assessments and those processes, and they did all the human factors with us, kind of giving us the experience for mobile launcher 1, for mobile launcher 2. So when we went to go through human factors for mobile launcher 1, we would look at these different areas as we're looking at the design, starting at 30%, and we look at all the different human interfaces. So where's the human going to be? Where are they going to be touching? Where are they going to be turning or lifting? So we looked through the checklist, and once we knew, like, okay, it's an access issue, so then we would go to the standard, pull out the requirements that apply to access, and then we would list these in human factors engineering assessment. That's the document to the right. So we have like around 40 subsystems in the mobile launcher. So we have 40 of these for hardware. We have about 40 of these for the controls and displays. It was a separate report because the hardware is ahead of the software. Kind of the software lags. So we had to wait till the hardware got to a certain point before we start the software. Especially in the beginning of this program, because we were all kind of learning how to do this. Before this system, they were launching space shuttle. And so we all had to learn how to become system engineering in the system engineering group. So this is just one example. Basically, this is showing on the tower there's a crew access arm, and on the crew access arm there's a motor. So looking at that human factors wise, we noticed that, okay, there's for access to that motor, and what do we need? We need to have visual and physical access. So that's actually the requirement. So what happens is, like, we can't come to a meeting and tell, like, the engineers, okay, we want more access. We have to show them, like, this is the requirement, and then we list all the requirements, we track them, and most of the time these design engineers, they know the human factors, they know about the human, they know how to get things right, but sometimes they don't see everything. So that's when we have to keep those at the top of the list, and we figure out a way to make it better so we can have better access. So in this case, what we did was we just moved the motor. I think it said, yeah, move the motor. This is a long time ago that we did this. So just basically showing the checklist is the one in the blue box. That's the kind of access. The requirement is the one to the right. Once you do this, it's kind of really pretty simple. And what's next? Because this is showing all the requirements for that crew access arm. Yeah, and I know that it is kind of really after some time, I think lots of times now for mobile launcher, for Artemis 2, we just use the checklist and we go through it and we say, look, there's no issues or there's a minor issue, and we don't use the whole HFPA now. But for mobile launcher 2 we did, and I think we could trim down those requirements, like probably like SpaceX does. I don't know if you heard about them, but they're pretty good at getting things done. They don't like to waste time, I've heard. So this is a starting point. This is kind of explaining everything. I'm not going to say it, but my colleague Donald Tran, he asked for some kind of definition of human factor, so I just made one based on what we do. This is I did this, I took a management class at work where it's called a Max Q, and it's kind of to get you to go to the next level. So, and they wanted us to build this chart to show about ourselves. So this is kind of a chart showing, the left side shows my highlights, and my motto in life. Work is grace and truth to the customer, and in my own life it's to do what Jesus tells me to do. So I try to share that. And then the right side is just pictures of different people, like my wife's family, my family. There's me down there on the left, working on a Volkswagen back when I was an electrician. I was an electrician for 11 years, and then my mom's up there. We were in India. She has this little red dot. We went to the hotel, and they put a little red dot on it there. So, and then the bottom are things that my other interests that I do. So that's kind of like about me. And this is also about me, but this is the Artemis 1 rocket on the launch pad. And how are we doing for time?
You got plenty of time.
Okay, that's what I thought. Remember I said I go pretty quick. Should I slow down a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to slow down. Sorry about that. Just trying to wake everybody up. And this was the Starship Tower. And so, you know, this was going to be the end. And the last time I did a presentation, it was over in 10 minutes. So I decided to add some more pictures in here. So these are mostly just pictures of some of the modeling we did here. This is a hold down post. This is where the rocket, there's 4 of these and the rocket sits on there. So we needed to get up, they needed to see if we could reach up there to do them, to work, it's like a bolt that's in there and everything. So we modeled this in our human modeling system, and it's an immersion modeling. So there's like, you can actually, we have like markers on people. There's different ways you can do this. You can put markers on people and you can immerse them into the design, or you can just do this on the computer. You can kind of move the arms and things like that until you get it right. This is another one. This was this drain point, and that's the service module for the Orion capsule. So we just modeled how they're going to get to the drain point and the different kind of ladders and stands that they needed to get in there. And this is just showing another one where, you know, that's the cameras that we capture the people and put it into the model. That's the CAD model. And we did the same thing with Bechtel. Bechtel had a 3D model of their launch tower. They had a big 3D model. We weren't able to immerse the human in there, but we had a group, human factors resolution team, that we would have different designers, and we would have like safety people and operations people, and we'd all look at the design, and we talk about, okay, well, maybe this valve is too high, or you know, how can we move this cabinet to have enough room for the doors to open, things like that. I'm sorry I'm not talking this way so much. I'll try to. But yeah, I'm kind of the slide, so maybe I'm left-handed. And then this right here, there's I don't know if you remember seeing in the launch pad, but there's these lightning rods, and this is way up in the sky. This is above the tower, and this is inside that lightning. So they wanted to model this truss, how they're going to install it, and so they modeled all that in there. And this is just showing another one where they're working underneath with a blanket that goes around the core stage engines. It's like, and they need to figure out how are we going to do this. So, but another thing you can do, you can use this for training. You can use this for seeing how you're going to set the people up. It's not always the design. Sometimes you want to say, well, how many people do we need to do this? Where do we need to locate them? You know, what are they going to do as they're doing the task? So this is a blanket where someone had to start it, and then as it was going along, that person would go to the other side, and you know, they kind of work it. This is like flight hardware, so you need to model these things because we don't want to damage any flight hardware because that's going to delay the launch. This is another one. I can't remember what it was, but I think that's on the SLS rocket. They're just modeling this piece of equipment. This is the Orion, and they're reaching in there. Is this mine or is this yours?
That was mine.
Okay.
There's another one right there.
A little dry. That's like a strain relief thing where, let me see. No, that's a strain. That's just the strain release thing that all the hoses go into the Orion capsule there, so they need to hold the cables on that piece of equipment. So what it was when they designed it, I'm not going to say who designed it, but they weren't thinking about human factors, so they had all these support bars, and it was hard to get. And these people are in escape suits to prevent getting any contamination. So they're, they really couldn't get their arms in there. They had to kind of be really high to get up there, and then there was like another thing above their head that was hard. So that one, finally they redesigned that strain release system. This is just a lifting task, and I know it wasn't. And this is another lifting task of what does it say there? Like this is going to hold somebody. It was a payload. I'm sorry, module payload. I thought it was like one of those lifts, but it's not. And This was another thing, this is like a, mission that went into space, and it was like, how do you tighten the bolts, like to make sure they can get in there. It's not in space, they don't do this operation in space, but before they assemble it, we went through how they, tighten all the bolts and assemble it and everything. And this was a TVPM, which was kind of like that stand to the left. We needed to push it and see how accurate and carefully, like how we could get it up to the vehicle, to the flight hardware. We don't wanna, again, we don't wanna damage that, because that's a lot of, you can't even touch it, you're not even allowed to touch it really unless you're working on it. So that stand there, we just kind of modeled it, and they could show that they could get close. And this one here is the emergency egress system, and we have like about 9 people in there, and there's a release system that they need to pull. So we wanted to model like where's the best place to locate this release system, because we don't want someone to release it early and if someone's still getting on. And we also, if we need a backup, so we would show that we could do with the backup person. If the first person kind of froze for some reason, it can happen to anybody. Like I thought I was gonna freeze before I came up here, but so I can't. So again, you need a backup. I hope you have a backup. What happened if I didn't make it? Would you have?
I was gonna have to cover it, Aaron.
Okay.
People are gonna hear enough from me, so.
Okay, well, thank you for trusting me. This is like a camera stand, and we have a bunch of different cameras on that record everything, so we can go back and look and see what happened. Like for Mobile Launcher 1, there was a lot of damage, like things, just places you wouldn't realize, like around corners, the thrust went there and it just blew off lights, and it blew handrails down. It was very strong, and sometimes it's never gonna be the same. So I don't know how you can model something like that, but this is the camera. They have cameras out there, so we needed to model how to lift this camera. And it turns out like they were doing it with 3 people, but the third person kind of had their hands in the back, and it was like they took their hands out right before it went on the stand. And I brought up, that they didn't take their hands out right enough, that they're gonna get their hands pinched, but that's how they would do it. So I recommended, it's not in here, but some kind of like lifting fixture for that, because they have to also carry these things upstairs and stuff like that. And this was kind of another thing. This is the panel, and they need to get the components out. So this is just showing they can get to all the components, they can reach them, get to it. This is one snapshot, that we have a lot of snapshots, or we do it live. And this is a stand that goes up to the Orion, and we need to figure out how we're gonna push this, like how much force, because we can measure the forces on the people. So, and then also, like, they need also, this has to be accurate and carefully positioned in place. So this is just a snapshot of that. And this was, we did with Marshall Space Flight Center, we did a collaboration where we have this collaborative room, and then they have their room, and we put it together so they could show us what they were doing on our screens, and we could have people actually in there doing things together. It doesn't show it here. I wish I had a better picture, but it's just, we did this collaboration with the environments, so we could work together on the design, real time. This is over at the Orion there. We need to make sure that they reach certain things. And this is just another thing going into the Orion, that we're building this like arm and handrail to go in there, because before they didn't have anything. It's like, okay, well, we gotta kind of be careful. We can't touch the Orion, and we gotta get in there, and it's like, well, why don't we put a handrail in? Human Factors suggested that, so now they have a handrail for that. This is just showing the envelope where they would grab and what they could grab onto. And here's another hoist cart thing that we did, another push-pull analysis. And this is showing the modeling again. They're out there doing the task, and we can look on this live on the screens of them doing it. And this is the final example of this. Hopefully, like the next section, it's a little bit about COF projects. So this is a chamber, and if you're looking down on the chamber, there's 2 people, and there's a piece of the experiments inside, and they just wanted to make sure they could reach around to the connection. There's a bunch of high voltage electrical connections that go in there, and then they close the door, and then it's like a vacuum chamber, and then they run the experiment. So we have a CFF department in NET, that's my division. And this is just the different branches. Facility, project manager. I can't read them from here, but you can read them. And then, and this is just showing the types of projects we do. So we'll do like electrical. We got a lot of electrical out there. So right now in the ONC Operation Checkup Facility, we're replacing all the old, this is 60s stuff. So they're gonna be replacing all of the panels and, it's a big building. And then the second one, that's the headquarters building, that's a new headquarters building that we built. And then the other one is about EGS, the things that go along for the program for Space Launch System. And the one down there, that's showing the demolition, but that's, the old headquarters building. And then we have also solar panels going all over the place out there, solar panel fields. This is the process. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, that we use for COF, simple process. And we do have human factors and statements of work, and I've done some A&E projects, and we look at what they're gonna do, and we hand them a set of requirements. And then they come back and say, well, these apply, these don't apply, and for what reason they don't apply. And then they'll also give like, for the ones that do apply, they'll give some kind of verification, a simple verification. So it's not as complicated for some of these facility type human factor assessments, but it does get in the projects. And so this is an emergency egress system, and there's cables going down. And so that was all an A&E project, and there's a basket that they all get in case something goes wrong. And those are the towers, like I was telling you before, where that big thing is, the top round thing is that big thing that they're standing in. These are some platforms that we had built out there in BAB to fit the rocket, the new rocket. So we had to redo the platforms because they were all for space shuttle. Am I doing too much? I feel like I'm getting to that point where, okay, you guys are good? Okay, I'll keep going.
A lot of geeky engineers here, Dan.
Okay. And this is the, I guess the pictures they had in the beginning, phase 1 and phase 2 of the headquarters building, and this is the demolition, and, oh, what happened?
I think that was the last slide we had in there.
Oh.
Did it not transfer over?
No, it didn't, but that's okay. Basically went back to my end slide, but I had some other stuff in here. We have a new bridge out there that goes to KSC. So there's a new bridge that we built. And what were some of the other ones? That was the main one. Oh, there was a LH2 tank that we built at the pad that's like about twice as big as the one that was there before. The human factors part of that was that they built this tank up higher, so you could actually walk underneath it. The other one was low to the ground. So that's one of the human factors, and of course all the valves and things are within reach and stuff like that. So I guess thank you for having me here, and I guess I'm gonna answer some questions now.
Yeah, Damon.
So we do have time for questions. I do have a couple of my own, if you don't mind. And
Am I in close reach?
yeah, no, it's kind of over there. Yeah, and Lynn, if we do have 2 mics, actually probably best for people to go up to the mics, but Lynn can also bring it to you if you want to ask questions. Let me ask one real quick first, though. So Damon, I think most people in here would agree that we do very similar work in a lot of ways. Checklists, standards, design reviews, that's music to our ears. And I think we'd also agree that, buildings are basically rockets that don't go to space. We agree on that? So, I'm curious in your mindset, when you go to your office every day and you go into buildings, what are the types of things that drive you crazy about what isn't being considered in human factors in your office and in buildings in general around controls, lighting, temperature? What are your thoughts there?
I wish I would have read your questions. Thing for me is doors, because sometimes doors open out and they look like they open in, and when I go to push a door, because there's a handle or pull it and it doesn't open, that kind of and then yeah, and then it's also it could hurt somebody, so that's the biggest kind of thing for me. And I mean, I've seen other things, but it doesn't bother me so much. I've seen like bathrooms where you can't tell which one is which, it just they look similar, or men's and women's. So, yeah.
One other question, Damon, we talked about that I'd like to hear a little bit more about is, NASA's been shifting to a zero blame environment. And I think that's a fascinating concept of zero blame and making sure that everyone's able to be part of the process, speak up if you see something that isn't correct. But at the same time, you work in a zero fault environment too. Failures are critical aspects of your job every day. So how do you balance the zero blame culture with zero fault?
That's a great question, because it came up the other day. someone said, we have these reviews for nonconformances, and they said, well, this was a human error. And I brought up, well, what was the human error? You know, it wasn't just like someone did something wrong, and they said, well, you can read it, that's what they told me. You can read it, you know. And I said, well, I'll talk to you about it later, but my point was that you don't wanna everything can be designed to where things happen with people, but we can do our best to design it so they won't do the wrong thing, so it won't be a human error. So, but then on the other side of the coin, you know, you gotta put a little pressure on people if they think that, hey, I don't wanna mess up because they're gonna point to me. So I don't know how you balance that, you know, you don't want someone, like myself, something goes wrong, and it did happen in Artemis 1, something's went wrong, it's like, well, human factors dropped the ball on this, you know, but it wasn't the case. It's just because if something happens, then you know, usually something happened with human that they didn't do. In this case, there was 2 panels, and we have these things called CUIs. It's like computer language stuff where they know how things are operating on the control panel, like signals. So the CUI was somehow got crossed in the beginning, which is a human factors thing, but when they go through those CUIs, they're very diligent, and this is like one that somehow slipped over. They thought this panel was on, but it was actually this one, and the thing overheated, you know, so, but they will point back to, you know, oh, well, you know, human factors, that's what they said, and I'm going like, pick up the ball, you know, so it is a little bit, we have to have accountability, but we also don't want someone not to speak up. Yeah. We want them to speak up, so yeah, I don't know how to manage that part, but I hope we have a lot of experience with that, so.
Excellent. Thanks, Dana. I have some questions.
I did have a question.
Yeah, you're on.
I wonder, how does NASA approach in the control, you know, within the control room where you can get like an error over here and you react incorrectly to that error? And it's a human factor, kind of like a Chernobyl where they had all the lights come up at one time and they didn't know how to stop the reactor from going. Now, how does NASA approach that? 'Cause that is kind of a human factor also of your reaction to what's happening in the system.
That's another great question. I get examples for that too. So, we have something called MCO, Master Console Operator, and they look at them also. We have people like monitoring errors themselves for their system, but they also have people, the Master Console Operator, monitoring these things too. So we have like someone overlooking the whole thing. But also our system's new, and I probably shouldn't talk about this much, but we get a lot of alarms, and in the beginning we get all of these alarms for things that maybe they're not working right, you know, because of the system, and that can get in the way. But we've been trimming those down. But you know, that came up the other day. We had like with the Master Console, where they bring up to the board like, okay, we have this problem, you know, and then I noticed that week like we had this problem, then we had another problem. So I brought up and said, well, you know, if you start putting these things together, what if this problem happens and this problem happens? You know, how do we, you know, we're looking at the aggregate. So they started thinking about that. You know, they didn't ask me to look at anything, but they're aware of it, you know, so. Does that answer?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it is approachable. To me, it sounds like you're saying that on the small systems, it moves its way to the top, and then the top makes a decision about control.
Well, they're looking at everything, so they can assist them. So the person on the council is really making the decision with the test director and test team. Yeah, so, is that okay? I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't like we're doing something wrong? Because you kind of like,
It's just like, you know, to me.
I mean, do you think we're doing it wrong?
You know, here in building commissioning, what we'll find a lot is that you have an operator, and an operator will make a decision thinking he's improving the performance of the HVAC system in the building. My example is, we had a problem with the building envelope, so we're getting some hot air into the ceiling above this corner office. And the guy's idea was, I'm just gonna increase the pressure in the VAP system to try and push more air over there. Well, it won't work because this thing is independent, so it only allows X amount of air, and it doesn't matter what pressure you have up there, it's pressure independent. And sometimes people make bad decisions on the operation side that affect, you know, what's happening in the overall system. That's kind of where I'm coming from, where sometimes people make decisions in the control of something that really messes everything else up. You know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of, and I know it's NASA, it's pretty well controlled, there's a bunch of PhDs in there, not a guy who's got.
No, it's normal people, like the technicians are.
Yeah, we're just normal people, we make mistakes,
Yeah.
you know.
But what we do for like, anything that's like, an operation, we have like a list of everything we're supposed to do, and then I'll have maybe safety, you know, be careful with this, you know, especially on the flight hardware, you know, so that's, I was looking at it from the control room when I gave that example, so yeah.
Lynn, do we have another question back there too?
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry, it might be really basic, but just for out of curiosity, so we were talking about the human factor. I'm wondering, how is the feedback loop designed over at NASA? Does it start at the technician hoisting the part, or does it start at the design engineer or practical engineer, solution engineer level to come up with those solutions? Coming from the trade world, often reaching a boat has been a challenge. So I was wondering, like, how is the feedback loop built up at NASA?
We work on teams and we pull in the operators from the beginning, so they're part of, you know, the design. So, and lots of times we'll have people that have done, because for the most part we were operators when we did space shuttle, they were operators and then they became system engineers because we went into this new system, so the operators became the engineers for many cases, so. Does that help? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I was just curious. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Morning.
So you mentioned that the single source of error, or single largest source of error, were design issues. I'm curious if you can talk about how are the design standards developed, and if there were design issues, what were the metrics in which it was determined that it was an issue? Are there key performance indicators that are used to determine if it was a pass or a fail, for instance? And then how do those pieces of information inform future designs?
So you're talking about the one chart that I had, the pie chart, how they did the analysis?
That's correct.
Actually, I wasn't involved with the analysis. Dr. Tim Barthy did it. Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know how I did the analysis. I just know he shared it with me to kind of encourage me with the human factors to say, look, we need to get the designs. So I guess I can answer the second part of that. So during this new system, we started off having human factors. We started off by doing human factors for the flight vehicle, because the flight hardware is designed by another center, like Johnson Space Center would design the capsule. So then they would, or the space shuttle would come to NASA. So the space shuttle, we would work on that flight hardware, but we didn't have anything to do with the design. So operators would get it, there's things you had to get to. It was just very difficult. So from the beginning with Orion, we started working where we need these kind of ground requirements. So, and it wasn't easy to get that in their flight hardware standards called NASA Standard 3001. But now there's a section in there, if you want, you look that up. It's a good section that has a design for the ground operators. I think that kind of answers your question. I couldn't give you the details of how they did that.
Those
sorting.
standards are defined by NASA already.
NASA Standard 3001, sorry, and it's the ground section. I think it's section 13. They gave us 13, but, these they gave us. Yeah, I think that kind of answers it. I don't have the background on the analysis they did on how the different the data, but they did sort it out to where about 23% was it? Was related to design, and now we have human factors heavily. We have like 12 operations human factors, so they're out there looking at the work tasks and helping with the work steps to improve those, and actually looking at the operations and improving the operations. I'm in the design group, so I think we have more human factors in the operations group too.
Yeah, I was wondering, two of your slides, one of them had it said a 5th percentile female, another one had 5%, and the 5% seemed to be related to a task in terms of reach, height. And I was wondering, if you could expand a little bit on this idea, this 5% or 5th percentile type of thing, is that, I mean, I was thinking if you go, okay, a 5% person in height, I mean, but maybe you need a 5%, 5th percentile person for weight, you know, or strength somewhere else, like, it would be hard to find candidates that meet all these criteria if you're going for those really high. I'm just curious if you could speak to that sort of percentile piece that was in there.
It's kind of like, so when we model something like a door, you wanna make sure the shortest person can push it open, but you don't want it to be too short for, so that's the 5th to 95th. And it all depends what you're modeling. We also have strength too, and that gives like from 5th to 95th. So we have to be within that if we're gonna like be able to lift something. So even, we can't say, oh, we're gonna get this big person to do the lift, it has to be. But sometimes in our designs, they have already designed it and we can do workarounds and say, okay, in the work instruction, this has to be, you know, a stronger person. But we try to design it for the 5th and 95th, like that. So it all depends on what you're looking for. If it's like strength, like you said, then you know, you look at the strength, 5th and 95th. If it's the height or reach as well, 5th and 95th. So usually, sometimes we can just use 50%, the average person, and get an idea of what, you know, if it's good enough.
Wayne, a question in the back there?
Hey there. I was wondering, how do you balance human factors with things like weight and cost? Like obviously, in a rocket, weight's gonna be really important. Handles and other accessibility stuff might add to that. How do you come to the conclusion of where the balance point is?
Yeah, that's always a struggle because, like, especially the flight hardware, because it's like, you know, you want to keep the weight down, and that's a struggle for them to keep their weight down for to be able, it's just the lift capability and everything. So when we want to do something in the design, it's usually we can't usually add things like, let's say we need something like a handhold. They might not want to add it because, but the problem with not having handholds in there is if they're inside, like say, the area where like the inner tank and you have all the piping and tanks in there, they might grab onto something like a electrical component. Like in the space shuttle, we used to go in there and they would grab onto, you know, connectors and end up maybe breaking a connector because they don't have anything to hold on to. So, and other things like there was hoses, they would step on hoses. So finally we would have like temporary covers that we could put in there and take out, like in the space shuttle. So yeah, it's always, they don't want to add weight, you know, so that's one example, like a handhold. They would want them to kind of temporary type things.
Yeah, question over here.
Hi, yeah. You mentioned in your presentation that you've got red and green alerts on the screens and keeping the colors consistent for across the screens. So I know that in the military, in order to serve, you have to make sure that you don't have color blindness. But for the building operators and building users that we're dealing with, we cannot constrain them like that. Are you able to constrain your workers who are going to be using your systems, or is there some other workaround that you've found in order to accommodate folks who might be colorblind?
Well, we kind of have like two approaches. One approach is in the firing room. We use the RGB that it kind of shows up for like red and green because that's the most common. So we use an RGB that's for color blindness, so they can kind of distinguish the difference. And we also add like symbols to it. Like for example, like our red uses white font. So, and the other ones, the green has black, actually it's a black background with green font would be like the numbers, the indicators and stuff. So it's a different background for like the red. And then we have other indicators too sometimes, you know, that just the shapes or things like that that we'll use. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. And then out in the field, they do need to do it like a colorblind test, I think, because we don't use that out in the field sometimes. So you know, it depends on what the operation is. Yeah, we also incorporate that in the field, but not everywhere. You know, so that depends on the operation. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Wayne, we have one that you're running to.
So when you showed the slide, what all the other companies that are involved, Boeing, SpaceX, and, you know, is NASA essentially acting as the GC, you know, over all of these companies, and you're requiring them to follow the same human factor specifications, or their contracts are a little bit more liberal, and they don't have to follow the NASA procedures that are established? It's more liberal, with the flight hardware, that's not really my area, but I know that they're involved more, with the flight hardware aspects and stuff like that. The ground systems, they pretty much, I think, we support them with our, you know, what we know, you know, our experience that we have, the knowledge. So it seems that way, and I don't do that. I mean, I'm part of the Artemis and SLS, so I'm not directly involved, so I'm kind of giving what I've heard, that they kind of do their own thing, and if they need help with something, like, there was some accidents that happened, they need help trying to figure out what happened with the accident, then we have our engineering team that we can help them. So that's what I've heard, but I'm not, you know.
So they have their own quality control procedures?
Oh yeah, they do their own, and I believe that it's a lot less, that's the rumor I hear. Which makes sense, I mean, you know, we're government. Yeah. thank you.
Actually, can I talk about that for a second? Like I need a microphone. My wife works for Boeing Company, and she's actually been here and she's worked on site. And her team is involved with procurement, that every single one of them had to go through a safety procedure to work on site. And what came out of that was comparing Boeing material to NASA material. There's a whole group of people that's all they do, all day long, is compare procedures and safety standards and those kind of things. So to answer your question, yes, Boeing had to up their game to work at NASA, because their standards weren't quite as NASA's were, so they had to level up too. And then they also made some suggestions for NASA. So it was collaborative, but Boeing came up to their level.
Thank you for.
Great. Well, thank you, Damon, really appreciate it.
There was someone last night, Wayne said he was gonna ask a question last night.
Oh, Wayne, is Wayne here?
And I don't know.
Wayne done?
You know,
You have a question,
he said he was
Wayne?
gonna ask a question, so I've been waiting the whole time. I'm sorry.
We usually don't have to wait for Wayne to ask a question either.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hang on.
Uh-oh, he's got a whole list of questions.
Go for it.
Go ahead, I'm ready.
All right,
Top
we're ready.
gun.
I guess that for me, the question that struck me from last night was with your work in human factors and you know, some of the work that we did in space planning and maintenance access on Slick 41 for the Atlas V program.
Oh, I can't think with that on.
Was, I agree. Was, what do you do about, like you're looking at reach and everything, what do you do about the fact that on extended stay missions, the astronauts are gonna basically decay physiologically and may not have the same reach and strength that they would have when they begin the mission?
Okay, it's also, you know, what I've picked up along the way, they do, they have like training they can do, like different kinds of training they can do that's like working their muscles and stuff. They want to keep their muscles up because that kind of depletes, like you said.
I saw that, but I also saw that they said they decayed and they're in spite of that.
Yeah, that's true.
That or not.
I think probably, you know, and this is what I hear, that they build themselves up before, you know, they kind of like do a lot of training before they go. I don't know if there's any kind of, maybe they take some stuff now, does anybody know? No?
I have no idea.
Maybe they take something too, like I've heard that they take different things to help them to do things in space.
I'm going to the Kennedy Space Center Friday night for the Mars Teeny thing, maybe that's what they're doing.
Thank you. Sometimes I don't get jokes like you. You know, I just think like, you know, what you said is real. I don't know, but it wasn't right.
It's true for a lot of us.
Okay.
So it's.
So the accommodations that you're making are
basically based on their current physical condition?
Well, the stuff that I do is it's all the ground system, but we do like the emergency egress system, where they have to come off the capsule and
Right.
take that slide. So it's kind of the same kind of thing, we go by their anthropometry, the size of them, and if it's actually first to 99th, I think, for astronauts. So, we make sure that everything is designed for their strength and their shape and stuff like that. This is ground stuff, it's not really the flight.
So it's all ground, yeah, I didn't know if you were involved with it.
Well, we do some modeling of like some of the installation of payloads and stuff like that, but we don't really model the astronauts doing the task inside the spacecraft.
Okay, cool.
That's Johnson's
I just
space.
ended up working on that latest zipline project, I thought that would be fun, but I didn't. And
Well, you wanted to work on it, but you didn't.
I don't think they call it the zipline, I think they call it a.
Oh, the zip line. Yeah, it's the emergency egress system. It used to be a zip line for space shuttle. You're gonna work on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, it used to be like 2 people basket
Yep.
that would go. I think actually SpaceX uses something like that, I think.
Thanks to SpaceX,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the one that, yeah.
We got this huge basket that costs, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, so SpaceX uses this little basket.
We also had the thing where we just launch them away from the nose cone, right?
Yeah, that's another way. Yeah, we have an abort system for that.
And we just hope that they splash where we want them to land,
Yeah.
not on the dirt stuff.
I'm not sure where it goes, but probably out in the ocean. I don't know.
Right,
Has
I'll
parachutes and
let
stuff like that.
someone else jump in.
I do have a question.
Oh, one more question, yeah, John.
A lot of us are in the industry, we're educating the industry. So how has that happened at NASA? How long does that take for it to be really accepted and then in practice constantly improved? So we're always teaching, whether it depends what region you're in. It might be really well accepted and really like a collaborative team environment where you're valued, or some people, not so much.
Yeah, I think a place to start would be like this checklist thing. And then, once you find it, if they want to use that in their design, that's what we do now. We start with a checklist and then we'll pull out some requirements that will help us to better, the design for that.
Was there like an aha moment when the engineers are going, okay, yeah, this completely makes sense, this is a valuable way to bring that feedback back into the design?
Sometimes, some of them don't, some of them appreciate it and pull us in, but kind of to answer your question, like in the beginning of Constellation, we started doing these, we actually kind of started with a checklist back then. It's part of the history of this. I didn't include that in here, I should have, but we started like 30%, we brought it to the system engineers, and we worked with them. So it kind of evolved, and then we evolved into requirements. So all along the way, we were improving, but we did start with a checklist. I don't know if that's answering your question, but the aha moment,
Just one thing more like on a time frame, say you started in 1980, did it take 10, 15 years before you're really part of the design system, the process?
I would, it's kind of, like I would say, because of the telework stuff, we can go to every meeting. Before, we couldn't go to every meeting before that. So being part of the team, we're walking to a meeting, we couldn't attend all the meetings. And then because of the teleworking, we attend so many meetings a day, we really get in the team. I don't know if I'm answering, but yeah, the aha moment, maybe I'm still waiting for it, but.
I think we are too.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sorry, I'm not answering your question exactly, but I'm kind of getting close, right? Maybe it was like during Constellation, there was one of the top managers said they were debating whether they should do this, human factors part of it, and he said, no, we have to have this. So that kind of set the stage. That was in Constellation for, we have to do this, for the ground stuff, So,
Great.
okay, thank you.
All right. Oh, another
Just
question.
quick thing, do you have a standard for listen and learn, and how often you update the standard or accomplish it?
Well, we do have a lessons learned and knowledge manager, Michael Bell, and he's constantly updating the database with new lessons learned. you can look it up, Michael Bell, you can probably find the information online, and lessons learned. We don't always follow the lessons, but you're aware of that, right? We kind of joke about it, lessons learned, but not, not always follow it, but, yeah. Is that good?
Yeah, but you have summary of it, and recommendation, accomplished, and from lesson learned.
You could look up, if you look lessons learned and Google, and you put Michael Bell, you can put my name too. We did a paper together, that's a little bit, but I don't know if it's enough for what you're looking for, but it's a little bit, and I'm willing to, if you want to reach out later on, just give my email or my phone number, it's okay.
Great. Please join me in welcoming Damon, and appreciate you joining us here. I do want to say is Christina Singh, yes. As we were thinking about human factors, I was thinking about one of the first projects I did on existing building commissioning, Wellington Elementary School with North Shore. You remember that project? I remember walking into this elementary school, and I needed to get to the mechanical room. The only access to the mechanical room was in the little girl's bathroom. Yeah. So anytime you wanted to do any work in that school, you either had to shut down one of the primary bathrooms for the little girls, or you had to wait till after hours. So human factors is very relevant in the work that we do. Appreciate your thoughts on how NASA is addressing that. Yeah, I also, Lynn, we were so excited about this conference, we actually started half hour early. So apologies to everyone that we're a little bit out of schedule. The good news is that we have a little bit more time to network, socialize, get to know each other. Please grab a coffee, some water. Our first sessions will start at 11 this morning, so a little bit of a break here. And then really looking forward to seeing our next sessions and our speakers, and thank you again for being here. Hey, Kevin. Surprised you're a little too much. I know.